The auction block felt cold against Maya's bare feet. Even through the thick calluses she had developed over the past 3 years, the Zephyrian slave market buzzed with the chittering sounds of a dozen different alien species, their voices creating a symphony of greed and cruelty that she had learned to tune out. Maya stood perfectly still, her chin raised despite her nakedness, despite the neural collar around her neck that could deliver agony at the press of a button. Her dark hair hung in tangled waves past her shoulders, and her brown eyes stared straight ahead, refusing to meet the hungry gazes of potential buyers. She had learned that showing defiance only made them bid higher. The auctioneer, a 6-armed Kralix with skin like wet leather, gestured toward her with 2 of his appendages, while the other 4 worked the crowd. "Behold, a prime specimen of the species known as human," he called out in galactic standard, his voice amplified by the translation device embedded in his throat. "Captured from the backwater world, Earth, 3 cycles ago. Trained in domestic service, mining operations, and entertainment." Maya's jaw clenched at the word entertainment, but she kept her expression neutral. The Zephyrians had indeed stripped her of everything: her ship, her freedom, her dignity, and nearly her sanity. But they hadn't broken her spirit, though they had tried hard enough. The bidding started low, as it always did with human slaves. Humans were considered weak by most galactic standards: no natural armor, no enhanced strength, no psychic abilities. They were seen as suitable only for menial tasks, and worse. Maya watched the crowd with peripheral vision, noting the usual suspects: mining consortium representatives looking for disposable labor, wealthy Altarians seeking exotic servants, and the occasional predator whose intentions made her skin crawl. 500 credits, called out a Vorthan merchant, his blue-scaled hide glistening under the artificial lights. 600, countered a Skrell Corporation buyer, her massive form casting a shadow across the auction floor. Maya had been through this routine twice before. Each time, her previous owners had grown bored or frustrated with what they perceived as human limitations and sold her back to the market. She wondered which fresh hell awaited her this time. From the back of the crowd, a new voice cut through the chatter, a voice speaking in heavily accented galactic standard, but with an unmistakable human timbre. 2,000 credits. The auction floor fell silent. Every alien head turned toward the source of the voice, and Maya's eyes widened as she saw him for the first time. He was human, definitely human, but unlike any human she had seen in the 3 years since her capture. He stood about 6 feet tall, with sun-weathered skin and steel-gray hair that looked like it had been cut with a knife. He wore clothes that seemed completely out of place in the sterile environment of the Zephyrian station: faded blue denim pants, scuffed leather boots, and a long brown coat that hung open to reveal a simple white shirt. On his head sat what appeared to be an ancient Earth artifact, a wide-brimmed hat that humans once called a cowboy hat. But it wasn't his appearance that made the crowd step back. It was the way he carried himself, the confidence in his stride, and the fact that he was clearly armed. A projectile weapon hung at his hip in a worn leather holster, and Maya could see the outlines of other weapons concealed beneath his coat. In a galaxy where energy weapons were the norm, the choice to carry primitive Earth firearms seemed either desperate or supremely confident. The auctioneer's 6 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of confusion in his species. That is. The bidding stands at 2,000 credits. Do I hear? Sold, the human said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent auction floor. He reached into his coat and produced a credit chip, which he tossed to the auctioneer with casual precision. Cash payment. The Kralix caught the chip with one of his lower arms, while his upper arms gestured frantically. But sir, we haven't completed the bidding process. There may be no other bids, the human interrupted, his pale blue eyes scanning the crowd. Maya noticed that wherever his gaze fell, potential bidders suddenly found reasons to look elsewhere. I believe the transaction is complete. The auctioneer ran the credit chip through his scanner, and his eyes widened at whatever he saw. Yes. Yes, of course. Transaction approved. The human female is yours. 2 Zephyrian guards approached Maya to remove her from the auction block, but the human held up a hand. "I'll handle it." He walked up to the platform with that same confident stride, and Maya got her first close look at him. His face was lined with years of hard living, and a jagged scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, but his eyes, when they met hers, held something she hadn't seen in 3 years: recognition. Not recognition of her specifically, but recognition of what she was, what she had been before the Zephyrians had taken everything. "Name's Jack Sullivan," he said quietly as he climbed onto the platform. His voice held a trace of accent that Maya couldn't quite place, something from old Earth. Maybe American Southwest. "I'm going to get you out of here. But I need you to stay calm and follow my lead." He reached into his coat and pulled out a simple gray tunic and pants, human-made, by the look of them. "Put these on." Maya's hands shook slightly as she took the clothes. It had been so long since anyone had offered her basic dignity. As she pulled the tunic over her head, she whispered, "Why?" Jack was scanning the crowd, his hand resting casually on his weapon. "Because no human deserves this. Because I've been where you are. And because we're going home." The word home hit Maya like a physical blow. For 3 years, she had convinced herself that Earth was gone, that home was a fantasy she couldn't afford. But standing next to this strange human who radiated confidence and danger in equal measure, she felt something she had thought dead stirring in her chest. Hope. The auctioneer approached them with a data pad. "Sir, we need to complete the ownership transfer forms. There are legal requirements for the transport of property across." Jack's hand moved with lightning speed, and suddenly the barrel of his projectile weapon was pressed against the Kralix's primary forehead. The sound of the weapon being cocked echoed through the suddenly silent auction hall. "She ain't property," he said in a voice quiet as winter wind. "She's crew." The auctioneer's 6 arms fluttered in panic. Of course, 1,000 apologies. I meant to say, a passenger manifest." "Yes, passenger manifest for your crew member." Jack holstered his weapon as smoothly as he had drawn it. "Much better." He looked at Maya, who was staring at him with something approaching awe. "You got a name?" "Maya," she managed. "Maya Chen. I was the navigation officer on the merchant ship Prosperity." "Good to meet you, Maya Chen." Jack tipped his hat slightly. "Now, I suggest we get moving before these folks remember they outnumber us about 100 to 1. As they walked toward the exit, Maya became aware of the crowd parting before them like water before the prow of a ship. Aliens that could have torn a human apart with their bare claws stepped aside and averted their eyes. It wasn't just Jack's weapons, she realized. It was something else. Something in the way he moved. The way he looked at the world like he owned it. "How?" she whispered as they reached the corridor leading to the docking bays. "How are you free? How are you armed? How are you here?" Jack smiled for the first time since she'd seen him, and it transformed his weathered face completely. "Long story. Darlin', let's just say the galaxy's a bigger place than most folks realize, and humans are a lot harder to kill than most folks think." They passed through a security checkpoint, and Maya tensed as the guards scanned them. But Jack's documents checked out perfectly, and the guards waved them through without question. Maya noticed that his identification listed his species as Terran rather than human, a subtle but important distinction in galactic law. "Your ship?" Maya asked as they entered the docking bay. Jack pointed toward a berth at the far end. "Right there." Maya followed his gaze and felt her jaw drop. Sitting in the berth was a ship unlike anything she had ever seen. It was clearly human in design, but not like any Earth vessel she knew. It was built low and wide, with hull plating that looked like it had been hammered by hand. Solar panel arrays extended like wings from its sides, and what appeared to be actual steel cables and guy wires held various components in place. It looked like something that belonged on the frontier of old Earth, adapted for space travel by someone with more ingenuity than resources. "What in the name of... what is that?" Maya breathed. "That," Jack said with obvious pride, "is the Prairie Rose. She ain't much to look at, but she's got it where it counts. Built her myself from scrap and salvage over the past 15 years. As they approached the ship, Maya could see that what she had taken for crude construction was actually ingenious adaptation. The hull plating was a patchwork of different metals and alloys, but each piece was perfectly fitted and sealed. The solar arrays were supplemented by what looked like wind turbines adapted for space, and she could see the distinctive glow of fusion reactors through vented openings. 15 years? Maya asked. How long have you been out here? Jack paused at the ship's airlock and looked back at her. I left Earth 23 years ago. Been free for the last 15. He palm-printed the airlock control, and the door cycled open with a soft hiss. But that's a story for when we're underway. Right now, we need to put some distance between us and this station, before someone decides that 2,000 credits wasn't enough for a human. Maya followed him into the ship, and immediately felt like she was stepping into a piece of old Earth. The corridors were lined with what appeared to be actual wood paneling, worn smooth by years of use. The lighting was warm and yellow instead of the harsh blue-white of most galactic standard vessels. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear what sounded like acoustic music playing softly. Welcome aboard, Jack said, sealing the airlock behind them. She's not luxurious, but she's home. Has been for longer than I care to count. Maya looked around in wonder. After 3 years of sterile alien environments, the prairie rose felt like stepping into a warm embrace. It's beautiful. Jack headed toward what she assumed was the bridge. Come on up front. We'll get underway, and then I'll show you to your quarters. You look like you could use a hot meal and about 12 hours of sleep. As they walked through the ship, Maya caught glimpses of other spaces. What looked like a machine shop filled with tools both familiar and strange, a hydroponics bay where earth plants grew under artificial sunlight, and what appeared to be a small but well-stocked medical bay. The ship felt lived in, loved, and completely human, in a way that made her chest tight with emotion. The bridge was a marvel of human ingenuity married to alien technology. The pilot's seat was clearly handmade from Earth materials, while the navigation console incorporated components from at least 3 different alien civilizations. Holographic displays showed star charts, and Maya's trained navigator's eye immediately began cataloging their current position. We're in the Zephyr system, she said automatically. Good eye. Jack dropped into the pilot's seat with the ease of long practice. That navigation training might come in handy. It's been a while since I had a proper nav officer aboard. His hands moved over the controls with practiced efficiency, and Maya felt the subtle vibration as the ship's engines came online. Through the forward viewport, she could see the docking clamps retracting. Jack, she said quietly, where are we going? He looked back at her, and that slight smile returned. I told you, darlin'. We're going home. But Earth is. Maya struggled with the words. Earth is under consortium control. Humans aren't allowed to return. The whole system is quarantined. Jack's smile widened, and there was something in his expression that reminded Maya of wolves she had seen in old Earth documentaries. That's what they want folks to think. Truth is, there's a lot more going on out there than the consortium admits. Earth's got some surprises left in her yet. The Prairie Rose cleared the station's docking bay and began to move away into open space. Maya watched the Zephyrian station shrink behind them, taking with it 3 years of her life that she would never get back. But for the first time since her capture, she was looking forward instead of back. How long? She asked. How long to get home? Jack was already plotting their course, his fingers dancing over controls that seemed to respond to his touch like old friends. About 6 weeks, if we don't run into trouble. Course. Trouble has a way of finding us out here. So we'll see. What the stage 4 here see? Crive. What the stage? Maya sank into the navigator's chair, feeling the ship's acceleration press her gently back into the seat. The chair fit her perfectly, as if it had been made for human proportions, which, she realized, it probably had. Jack, she said after a moment. Thank you. I don't know how I can ever repay. No need, he cut her off gently. I told you. I've been where you are. Someone gave me a chance once. Pulled me out of a hole I couldn't climb out of myself. This is just me passing it forward. Maya felt tears starting to well up in her eyes, the first tears she had allowed herself in years. They took everything, she whispered. My ship, my crew, my freedom. They made me forget who I was. Jack reached over and squeezed her shoulder briefly. They took what they could see, darlin'. But they couldn't take what matters. You're still you. Maya Chen, navigation officer. You're still human. And now you're free. As the prairie rose jumped to hyperspace and the stars elongated into lines of light, Maya felt something she had thought lost forever settling back into place in her chest. She was going home. She was free, and she was no longer alone. Behind them, the Zephyrian station continued its grim business. But Maya Chen was no longer part of that world. She was crew aboard the Prairie Rose, and she was going home. The cowboy had kept his word. Maya woke to the smell of coffee, real coffee, not the synthetic substitutes she had endured for 3 years. For a moment, she lay still in the narrow bunk, savoring the aroma and the gentle hum of the Prairie Rose's engines. The small cabin Jack had given her was spartanly furnished but clean, with a porthole that showed the swirling colors of hyperspace. Most importantly, the door had no lock on the outside. She could leave whenever she wanted. That simple freedom still felt like a miracle. She dressed in the clothes Jack had provided, sturdy work pants and a soft flannel shirt that felt impossibly luxurious after years of rough prison garments. When she emerged from her cabin, she followed the coffee smell to what served as the ship's galley. Jack stood at a small stove, tending to what appeared to be actual eggs in a cast-iron skillet. He had traded his long coat for a simple denim shirt, and Maya could see that his arms were marked with old scars, some that looked like weapons injuries, others that might have been from hard labor. "Morning," he said without turning around. "Hope you like your eggs over easy. Fresh from our own chickens." "Chickens?" Maya stared at him. "You have livestock on this ship?" Jack chuckled and gestured toward a small viewport. Through it, Maya could see a section of the ship she hadn't noticed before, what appeared to be a small agricultural dome attached to the main hull. Inside, she could make out the movements of actual Earth animals. "Small flock," Jack said, sliding the eggs onto a plate alongside what looked like real bacon. 6 hens and a rooster. Plus some goats for milk and cheese. Amazing what you can do with artificial gravity and a recycling system. Maya accepted the plate with hands that trembled slightly. How is any of this possible? The consortium banned humans from keeping Earth animals. They said we were spreading biological contamination. The consortium says a lot of things. Jack poured coffee into 2 metal cups, actual ceramic, being too much of a luxury for a working spacecraft. Most of it's designed to keep humans down and out, make us dependent on their systems, their food, their technology. Maya took a bite of the eggs and nearly wept. She had forgotten how real food could taste. But how do you avoid their patrols? Their inspections? Jack sat down across from her at the small table. Simple. I don't go where they are. He unfolded a holographic star chart that materialized above the table's surface. See, most folks think space is small because they only travel the main shipping routes. But the galaxy's a big place, with lots of empty regions between the major systems. You know how to read an old-fashioned stellar map? Maya studied the hologram, her navigator training kicking in automatically. This isn't standard galactic cartographic format. Nope. Earth astronomical charts. Pre-consortium. I've been mapping systems the old-fashioned way. Visual observation. Gravitational analysis. Good old-fashioned dead reckoning. Built up quite a database over the years. Maya's eyes widened as she began to understand the implications. You've been exploring uncharted space, finding systems the consortium doesn't know about. Both. More than that, Jack manipulated the hologram, highlighting several star systems with green markers. I've been finding humans. Humans? But that's impossible. All human colonies were incorporated into consortium territory or abandoned. Jack's smile had an edge to it. That's what they want everyone to believe. Truth is, humans are stubborn creatures. When the consortium showed up and started dictating terms, some folks decided they'd rather make their own way, packed up their families and headed out into the dark. Maya set down her coffee cup with a trembling hand. You're talking about entire colonies. Thousands of people. Hundreds of thousands, actually. Maybe more. Scattered across maybe 50 systems that don't appear on any official charts. Jack highlighted more systems on the map. Ranchers on Frontier Station, mining families on Iron Ridge, traders operating out of the Haven Cluster. All free humans, living by their own rules. Maya felt like the world was reshaping itself around her. Everything she had believed about humanity's place in the galaxy was wrong. But how do they survive? Without consortium technology, without trade agreements. Same way humans always have, by being too stubborn to die and too clever to quit. Jack stood and walked to a cabinet, from which he withdrew what appeared to be a bottle of whiskey. Take the folks on Frontier Station. Started as a cattle ranch, yes, actual Earth cattle. Now they're supplying leather and meat to a dozen different species who think it's exotic alien protein. Making a fortune doing it. 2. He poured a small amount of whiskey into Maya's coffee. The mining families on Iron Ridge? They're pulling rare earth metals out of asteroids, using techniques the consortium hasn't figured out yet. Turns out humans are good at working in dangerous environments. Who knew? Maya sipped the enhanced coffee and felt warmth spread through her chest. But why haven't I heard about any of this? In 3 years of being traded around the galaxy, no one ever mentioned free human colonies, because the consortium works real hard to keep it quiet. Bad for business if other species start thinking humans might be worth more than cheap labor. Plus, most of the free colonies don't advertise their existence. Safer that way. Jack sat back down and leaned forward, his expression serious. Maya, what I'm about to tell you needs to stay between us. The Prairie Rose isn't just a wandering merchant ship. I'm what you might call a recruiter. Recruiter? I find humans in bad situations, slaves, prisoners, folks who've been written off by the system. I give them a choice. Come with me to one of the free colonies, or I'll drop them wherever they want to go with enough credits to start over. Maya stared at him. How many people have you rescued? Over the past 15 years? Maybe 300. Could be more. I stopped counting after a while. 300. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Jack? That's my crew manifest right there, Jack said, pointing to a section of the holographic display where hundreds of names scrolled slowly past. Every human I've pulled out of slavery or servitude. Most of them are living free on Frontier Station now, or one of the other colonies. Some decided to stay aboard and help with the recruiting. Maya noticed something on the display that made her heart skip. Wait. Stop the scroll. She pointed to a name that had just appeared. Rodriguez. Carlos. Engineer. Rescued from Altarian Mining Station, year 2387. Jack paused the display and looked where she was pointing. You know Carlos? He was on my ship. The Prosperity. I thought. When the Zephyrians attacked, I thought he was killed. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Is he alive? Is he safe? He's more than safe. He's the head engineer on Frontier Station now. Married a lovely woman named Sarah, got 2 kids and another on the way. Be real happy to see you. I expect. Maya put her face in her hands and sobbed great. Heaving sobs of relief and joy and loss all mixed together. Jack reached across and squeezed her shoulder gently, letting her cry without trying to stop her or comfort her. After 3 years of holding everything inside, she needed this release. When she finally looked up, Jack was studying the star chart with professional interest. We'll be dropping out of hyperspace in about 6 hours, he said matter-of-factly. Need to make a fuel stop at an asteroid mining station. You feel up to lending a hand with the navigation? Been flying solo for a while, and I could use another set of eyes. Maya wiped her face with the sleeve of her shirt. Of course. It would be. It would be good to work again. To be useful. You've always been useful, darlin'. Just took you a while to remember it. 6 hours later, Maya sat in the navigator's chair as the Prairie Rose dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of an unnamed system. Her hands moved over the navigation controls with the ease of long training, calculating trajectories and orbital mechanics with a precision that made Jack nod approvingly. There, she said, highlighting a marker on the display. Asteroid field, at bearing 27 Mark IV. I'm reading multiple structures. Looks like a mining operation. Good eye. That's McCready Station. Independent operation, run by a Scottish fellow who left the consortium about 10 years ago. Tough as nails, but honest in his dealing. As they approached the asteroid field, Maya was amazed by what she saw. The mining station was built into and around several large asteroids, connected by a web of cables and tube structures. Ships of various designs, some clearly human, others of unknown origin, were docked at multiple airlocks. It's huge, Maya breathed. How many people work here? About 2,000, last I checked. Humans mostly, but Malcolm McCready doesn't discriminate. Got some Rigelian engineers, a family of Arcturian metallurgists, even a couple of ex-consortium officials who decided they preferred freedom to bureaucracy. The Prairie Rose docked at one of the station's outer rings, and Maya followed Jack through the airlock into a bustling corridor that looked like something out of old Earth's Wild West. The walls were raw metal and stone, but they were decorated with paintings and tapestries from a dozen different worlds. The air smelled of metal dust and human sweat and coffee and life. Humans moved through the corridors with purpose and confidence, many of them wearing practical work clothes and tool belts. But Maya also saw other species working alongside them as equals, not as masters or slaves. A massive Vorthan engineer worked side by side with a small human technician, both of them laughing at some shared joke. Jack Sullivan. A voice boomed from across the corridor. A man approached them, tall and broad-shouldered, with graying red hair and a beard that reached his chest. His accent was so thick Maya could barely understand him. You old scoundrel. What brings you to my little corner of paradise? Malcolm, Jack shook the man's hand warmly. Need fuel and supplies. Plus, I've got someone I'd like you to meet. Malcolm turned to Maya, and his eyes immediately softened. She realized he was seeing the signs of what she had been through. The too thin frame, the nervous way she held herself, the fading marks where restraints had been. I see. Malcolm's voice became gentle. Welcome to McCready Station, lass. Any friend of Jack's is welcome here. How long since you've been free? 2 days, Maya said quietly. 2 days. Malcolm nodded as if this explained everything. Well then, you're still getting your feet under you. Tell you what, why don't you let me show you around while Jack handles the boring business of fuel transactions? I think you might find our little operation interesting. Maya looked to Jack, who nodded encouragingly. Go ahead. Malcolm's got something special here, worth seeing. For the next 2 hours, Malcolm McCready gave Maya a tour that changed her understanding of what humans were capable of. The station wasn't just a mining operation, it was a technological marvel. Human engineers had developed new techniques for asteroid mining that were 50% more efficient than consortium methods. The life support systems used closed-loop recycling that wasted nothing. The defensive systems were a hybrid of human ingenuity and alien technology that could apparently hold off a small fleet. The trick, Malcolm explained as they stood in the main engineering section, is that humans don't think the same way as other species. Take asteroid mining. Most species use brute force big energy beams to blast chunks off, then process the debris. Wasteful and dangerous. He led her to an observation window where they could see the mining operation in action. Instead of energy weapons, Maya saw what appeared to be humans in work suits, using carefully placed charges and precision tools to extract ore with surgical precision. We use controlled explosions, shaped charges, and good old-fashioned engineering know-how. Extract 3 times the useful material with 1/10 of the energy expenditure. Plus, we can work seams that other species would consider too dangerous or complex. It's brilliant, Maya said, watching a team of human miners work together with the kind of coordination that spoke of years of partnership. But how do you compete with consortium operations? They have massive resources. Malcolm's grin was fierce. They've got resources, but they don't have what we have. Which is, humans who give a damn. They moved on to the station's workshops, where Maya saw innovations that took her breath away. Human craftsmen were creating tools and technologies that combined the best of human design philosophy with advanced alien materials. A jeweler was creating works of art that incorporated zero-gravity crystal formations. Engineers were building spacecraft components that were lighter and stronger than anything she had seen in the consortium. The galaxy thinks humans are good for manual labor, Malcolm explained. They see the muscle and miss the brain. They see the emotion and miss the creativity. Their loss is our gain. In the station's central hub, Maya was introduced to families, actual human families, with children who had never known slavery or oppression. The children played games that seemed to be hybrids of Earth traditions and alien concepts. Their laughter echoing through the corridors like music. "How do you protect them?" Maya asked quietly. "What happens when the consortium decides you're too successful to ignore?" Malcolm's expression hardened. "Then we show them why it's a bad idea to corner a human with something to protect." He gestured toward a sealed section of the station. "We're not defenseless, lass. Humans have always been good at two things: building things up and tearing things down." The consortium would be wise to remember that. When they returned to the Prairie Rose, Maya found Jack checking over a new set of supplies. He looked up as she approached, and she could see him reading her expression. "Changed your perspective a bit?" he asked. "Everything I thought I knew about humans in the galaxy was wrong," Maya said. "We're not just surviving out here. We're thriving. Some of us are. Others are still in chains, waiting for someone to give them a chance." Jack sealed the last cargo container and turned to face her fully. "Maya, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think real carefully before you answer." She nodded. "I'm offering you a choice. I can take you straight to Frontier Station, where you can start over with Carlos and the others. You'll be safe. You'll be free. And you'll have a chance to build whatever life you want. Or," Jack's expression became serious, "or you can stay aboard the Prairie Rose and help me with the recruiting. It's dangerous work. We go places where humans are in trouble. And sometimes that means going places where we're not welcome. Sometimes it means fighting. Sometimes it means making hard choices." Maya thought about the past 2 days, about the revelation of free human colonies, about children playing in corridors built by human hands in defiance of an entire galaxy's expectations. "If I stay," she said slowly, "how many more people could we save? People like me? Hard to say. Maybe a dozen over the next year. Maybe more. Maybe less." Maya looked around the Prairie Rose's cargo bay, noting the careful way Jack had secured the supplies, the obvious love and care that went into maintaining every system. This ship wasn't just transportation, it was home for whoever needed one, a lifeline for humans who had lost hope. "Carlos is safe," she said finally. "He's building a life, raising a family. He doesn't need me anymore." Jack waited, not pushing her toward any particular answer. "But there are others out there who do need us. Who are where I was 2 days ago, thinking they're alone in the universe. It's not easy work," Jack warned. "And it's not safe. I can't promise you'll see Frontier Station again." Maya thought about the auction block, about the weight of the neural collar, about 3 years of believing she would never be free. Then she thought about the look in Jack's eyes when he had said, "She ain't property, she's crew." "You pulled me off that auction block because no human deserves slavery," she said. "Well, there are more humans out there who don't deserve it either." Jack studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Welcome to the crew, Navigator Chen." As the Prairie Rose undocked from McCready Station and headed back into open space, Maya took her place at the navigation console, with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. They were heading into the unknown sectors, following reports of human prisoners on a Thorian labor world. It would be dangerous. It would be difficult. It was exactly where she needed to be. Through the forward viewport, the stars looked different now, not cold and distant, but full of possibility. Somewhere out there, humans were building new lives in defiance of a galaxy that had written them off. And somewhere out there, other humans were waiting for rescue, waiting for someone to tell them they weren't alone. The Prairie Rose jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward their next mission. Maya Chen, navigator of the free ship Prairie Rose, was going to help bring them home. The Thorian labor world of Kethmora hung in space like a diseased fruit, its surface scarred by massive open-pit mines that could be seen from orbit. Maya studied the planet through the Prairie Rose's sensors, her navigator's training automatically cataloging the defensive installations and orbital traffic patterns. 47 human prisoners confirmed in the Eastern Mining Complex, she reported to Jack, who was studying tactical displays at the pilot's station. Heavy Thorian guard presence, automated defense systems, and what looks like a command center built into the mountainside. Standard Thorian efficiency, Jack muttered, adjusting the ship's passive sensors to get a better look. They don't waste resources on anything that doesn't increase productivity. That works in our favor. Thanks for watching. Another one. Undonna Fader. They working that scene. Maya had been with Jack for 3 weeks now. And in that time, they had successfully rescued 12 humans from various situations, some from slave markets like her own, others from prison colonies or work camps. Each rescue had taught her more about Jack's methods, which seemed to rely heavily on careful planning, precise timing, and an understanding of alien psychology that came from years of experience. There's something else, Maya said, highlighting a section of her display. I'm reading a Zephyrian merchant vessel in orbit. The same class as the ship that originally captured me. Jack's expression hardened. Registry? Maya ran the identification sequence. ZMS, Prophet's Edge. Captain Vex Morthen commanding. Son of a bitch. Jack's hands clenched into fists. I know that ship. Morthen's the one who's been supplying most of the human slaves to the auction markets. Been trying to track him down for 2 years. This could be our chance, Maya said. But if he's here making a delivery, then there are more humans down there than our intelligence suggested. Jack stood and began pacing the small bridge. A habit Maya had learned meant he was working through a complex problem, probably another 30 or 40 prisoners aboard his ship, waiting to be processed. Maya pulled up the tactical display. Jack, this is bigger than anything we've attempted. The Thorian labor camp, plus a Zephyrian slaver vessel? We're talking about maybe 80 prisoners total, defended by hundreds of guards. I know. Jack stopped pacing and turned to look at her. Maya, I'm going to ask you to do something dangerous, something that goes against every instinct you've developed since your capture. What do you need me to do? Jack walked to a secure locker and began pulling out equipment Maya had never seen before. I need you to go back. Back? Maya's blood ran cold. Back to the slavers? Undercover. You're going to pose as escaped slave who's been recaptured. Jack held up what appeared to be a deactivated neural collar, identical to the one Maya had worn for 3 years. This is a fake. It looks and feels real. But it's actually a sophisticated communication device and scanner. You'll be able to stay in contact with me and map the interior of both facilities. Maya stared at the collar, feeling phantom pain around her neck. Jack, I can't put that thing on again. Jack set the collar down gently and moved to sit across from her. Maya, I wouldn't ask this of you if there was any other way. But you're the only one who knows how these operations work from the inside. You know how the guards think, how the systems operate. Most importantly, you know how to help other prisoners without getting them killed. But if something goes wrong, then I'll come get you. I promise you that. Jack's voice was steady and certain. I've never left anyone behind, and I'm not starting now. Maya looked at the collar again, then at the tactical display showing the positions of nearly 80 human prisoners. 80 people living the nightmare she had escaped just weeks ago. What's the plan? For the next 4 hours, Jack walked Maya through the most audacious rescue operation she could have imagined. It relied on split-second timing, human psychology, and a level of technological sophistication that seemed impossible for a single ship to achieve. The first phase began when Maya, wearing the fake collar and dressed in prison garments, allowed herself to be captured by a Thorian patrol near the planet's surface. The Prairie Rose remained in orbit, apparently powered down and adrift, just another piece of space debris in a system full of mining waste. Maya forced herself to act the part of a defeated prisoner as the Thorian guards processed her through the camp's intake system. The alien guards, tall, four-armed creatures with chitinous exoskeletons, barely looked at her as they ran their standard scans. The fake collar passed inspection perfectly, and Maya was assigned to the general population barracks. The conditions in the barracks were even worse than Maya had expected. Nearly 60 humans were crowded into a space meant for 30, sleeping on metal shelves stacked 3 high. The air was thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and despair. Many of the prisoners showed signs of malnutrition and abuse, and Maya's heart ached as she recognized the same broken expressions she had worn for 3 years. But not all of the prisoners were broken. As Maya moved through the barracks, she began to identify the ones who still had fight left in them. A former ship's engineer named Thomas, who was quietly sabotaging mining equipment. A medical officer named Dr. Sarah Kim, who was keeping the sickest prisoners alive through improvised treatments, and a grizzled old Marine named Sergeant Peterson, who was clearly planning something. Using hand signals and whispered conversations, Maya began to make contact with the resistance cell that had formed among the prisoners. She learned that they had been planning their own escape attempt, but lacked the resources and knowledge to overcome the camp's security systems. "We've mapped the guard rotations," Peterson whispered, during their work shift in the mines. "We know where they keep the weapons, but we can't get past the perimeter sensors, and we don't have any way to deal with the orbital defenses." "What if I told you help was coming?" Maya asked quietly. Peterson's eyes narrowed. "I'd say you're either crazy or you're working with the guards to flush out the resistance." Maya made a decision that could have gotten her killed. She activated a hidden function on her fake collar, projecting a small hologram only Peterson could see. The image showed the Prairie Rose and Jack's face. "My name is Maya Chen, and I'm crew on the free ship Prairie Rose. We're here to get you out." Peterson stared at the hologram for a long moment, then slowly smiled, the first real smile Maya had seen in the camp. "Well, I'll be damned." "When?" "Tonight." As evening fell, Maya used her collar's communication system to coordinate with Jack. The Prairie Rose had been busy during the day, using passive sensors to map every detail of the camp's defenses and the Zephyrian ship's position. What Jack had discovered changed everything. The Zephyrian ship isn't just making a delivery. His voice whispered in Maya's ear through the collar's hidden speakers. "According to the communications I've intercepted, they're planning to take all the current prisoners off-world tomorrow. This is a slave harvest. They're clearing out the camp to make room for new victims." "How many guards aboard the Zephyrian ship?" Maya asked, pretending to adjust her collar as other prisoners moved around the barracks. "Skeleton crew. Maybe 8 Zephyrians total. The rest of their security is down on the surface." Jack paused. "Maya, this is our chance to hurt them. Not just rescue these prisoners, but shut down one of their major supply operations. What do you need me to do?" "At exactly midnight, I need you and the other prisoners to create a distraction. Something big enough to draw the guards' attention to the north side of the camp. Can you do that?" Maya looked around the barracks at the faces of her fellow prisoners, scared, desperate, but not broken. "Not yet. We can do that." At 11:45 p.m., Maya gathered the resistance cell in a corner of the barracks. Peterson had brought 5 other prisoners he trusted completely, while Dr. Kim had prepared improvised weapons from medical supplies and mining tools. "Here's what's going to happen," Maya whispered. "At midnight, we're going to stage a riot in the North Barracks. Make it look like a food protest that got out of hand. That will draw the guards away from the main gate and the communications center." "Then what?" asked Thomas, the engineer. "Then we improvise," Maya said with a smile that reminded her of Jack. "But I promise you this, none of us are going back in those cages." At exactly midnight, all hell broke loose in the north section of the camp. Peterson and his people started a fight that quickly spread to involve 30 prisoners and a dozen guards. Alarms began wailing, and Maya watched through the barracks windows as armored Thorian guards rushed toward the disturbance. That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a few seconds later. But in that brief moment of total darkness, something had changed. Maya felt it, rather than saw it, a subtle shift in the camp's electromagnetic environment that suggested someone had just taken control of the facility's computer systems. "Move," Maya whispered to her group. They slipped out of the barracks and made their way toward the camp's central command post. The building was supposedly impregnable, protected by energy barriers and automated defenses. But as Maya approached, the barriers flickered and died, and the automated gun turrets swiveled to point harmlessly at the sky. "Jack's in their computer system," Maya breathed. She had no idea how he had managed it. But somehow, the Prairie Rose had penetrated the camp's supposedly secure network. Inside the command post, Maya and Dr. Kim quickly located the master controls for the prisoner restraints. With her navigation training, Maya was able to understand the Thorian control systems well enough to disable the neural collars of every prisoner in the camp simultaneously. The effect was immediate. Throughout the camp, prisoners who had been docile and compliant suddenly found themselves free of the electronic leashes that had controlled them for months or years. The sounds of the riot in the north section changed, becoming more organized and purposeful. "Communications array," Thomas said, pointing to a bank of equipment along one wall. "If we can control that, we can coordinate with everyone." Maya activated the array and broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Navigator Chen of the free ship Prairie Rose. All prisoners, the collars are down. Repeat, the collars are down. Rally to the armory in Section 7. We're going home." What happened next would later be talked about in free human colonies throughout the galaxy as the Night of Liberation. Freed from their electronic restraints, nearly 60 human prisoners acted with a coordination and efficiency that stunned their Thorian guards. Years of pent-up rage and desperation channeled into focused action. Peterson led a squad to the armory, where they discovered that the weapon locks had also mysteriously malfunctioned. Within minutes, ex-military personnel were arming civilian prisoners and organizing them into effective tactical units. Dr. Kim took control of the medical facility, treating injured prisoners and ensuring that those too weak to fight were moved to safety. Thomas and his engineering team began systematically sabotaging the camp's infrastructure, disabling communication relays and power systems that would make it impossible for the Thorians to quickly call for reinforcement. Through it all, Maya coordinated the resistance from the command post, using her navigation skills to track friendly and enemy positions throughout the complex. She was so focused on the tactical situation that she almost missed Jack's voice coming through her collar. "Maya, look up." She glanced through the command post's transparent aluminum windows and felt her heart skip a beat. The Prairie Rose was descending through the atmosphere, no longer pretending to be dead space debris. But it wasn't alone. 3 other ships flanked it, vessels Maya recognized as being of similar design to Jack's ship. Human ships, built in the outer colonies, with the same combination of ingenuity and stubborn determination that characterized the Prairie Rose. "Friends of yours?" she asked. "Word gets around." Jack's voice was warm with satisfaction. "Seems like Malcolm McCready thought this operation was too important to leave to one ship." The Frontier Station Council voted to send assistance. Maya watched as the 4 ships moved into position around the camp. Their weapons weren't the sleek energy arrays favored by most galactic species, but rather the kind of solid, reliable projectile systems that humans had perfected over millennia of warfare. They looked primitive compared to alien technology, but Maya had learned not to underestimate human engineering. The Zephyrian ship in orbit was the first to realize something had gone wrong. Maya watched on the sensors as the Prophet's Edge began powering up its weapons and engines, preparing either to fight or flee. It never got the chance to do either. The 4 human ships opened fire simultaneously, their projectile weapons creating a devastating crossfire that the Zephyrian vessel's energy shields simply weren't designed to handle. Solid metal slugs traveling at relativistic speeds punched through the alien ship's defenses like they weren't there. Within minutes, the Prophet's Edge was crippled and venting atmosphere. Maya watched as escape pods began launching from the dying ship, the Zephyrian crew abandoning their vessel and their cargo of human prisoners. "Justice," Peterson said quietly, appearing beside Maya at the command post window. The old Marine's face was grim with satisfaction. "How many humans did that bastard Morthan sell into slavery? Now he knows how it feels to lose everything." The ground battle was winding down as well. The Thorian guards, already outnumbered and outmaneuvered by the freed prisoners, found themselves facing a new threat as the human ships began landing and disembarking additional personnel. These weren't just rescue teams, they were representatives of the free human colonies, armed and equipped with the best technology their communities could provide. Maya watched through the sensors as Thorian guards began surrendering en masse. They had been trained to handle prisoner revolts and even small-scale rescue attempts. But nothing in their experience had prepared them for coordinated military action by supposedly primitive humans. The commanding Thorian officer approached the command post under a flag of truce 3 hours after the operation began. Maya, as the ranking member of the rescue team present, found herself conducting surrender negotiations. "I am Commander Jektar," the tall alien said in heavily accented galactic standard. "I wish to discuss terms of cessation of hostilities." Maya looked at the alien who had overseen the suffering of dozens of humans and felt the weight of 3 years of slavery pressing down on her shoulders. When she spoke, her voice was steady and cold. "No terms," she said simply. "You release all humans in your custody immediately. You provide medical treatment for any who need it. You allow us to remove all prisoners and their personal effects. Then you leave this system and never return. And if we refuse?" Maya gestured toward the window, where the wreckage of the Zephyrian ship was still visible as burning debris in the sky. "Then you end up like your business partners." Commander Jektar's compound eyes studied Maya for a long moment, and she could see him reassessing everything he thought he knew about humans. "The consortium will hear of this. There will be consequences." "The consortium can go to hell," Maya replied, using an Earth expression she doubted the alien would understand. "But you're welcome to tell them that free humans are done being their property." The evacuation took another 6 hours. Maya watched with tears in her eyes as 78 human prisoners, including 31 who had been aboard the Zephyrian ship, walked free for the first time in years. Many of them were in poor health, and all of them would need time to heal from their experiences. But they were alive, and they were free. Dr. Kim had identified several prisoners who needed immediate medical attention, and arrangements were made to transport them to medical facilities on Frontier Station. The others would be given the same choice. Maya had been offered a safe life in the colonies, or a chance to join the growing fleet of rescue ships that were operating throughout the outer sectors. As the Prairie Rose lifted off from Kethmora with its cargo of freed humans, Maya stood on the bridge beside Jack and watched the planet fall away beneath them. The mining camp was a smoking ruin, its systems so thoroughly sabotaged that it would take months to rebuild. More importantly, the Thorians had learned a lesson about the true capabilities of humans. "So," Jack said as they jumped to hyperspace, "how does it feel to be a liberator instead of a victim?" Maya thought about the question seriously. 3 weeks ago, she had stood naked on an auction block, convinced that she would never see home again. Now she was part of something larger than herself, something that was changing the balance of power in the galaxy one rescue at a time. "It feels like coming home," she said finally. Jack smiled and handed her a data pad. "Speaking of which, I've got something for you." Maya looked at the pad and saw it contained a message from Carlos Rodriguez on Frontier Station. Her former crewmate had heard about the rescue operation and wanted to thank the team personally. But more than that, he was requesting permission to join the Prairie Rose's crew for their next mission. "Seems like word is spreading," Jack said. "More and more folks want to be part of this. The free colonies are talking about organizing a formal rescue fleet, maybe 50 ships dedicated to finding and liberating enslaved humans." Maya looked around the Prairie Rose's bridge, noting how it had become home to her in just a few weeks. But she also thought about the thousands of humans still trapped throughout the galaxy, waiting for someone to remember they existed. "50 ships won't be enough," she said. Jack's grin was fierce and proud. "No, it won't. But it's a start." As the Prairie Rose carried its passengers toward freedom, Maya Chen stood at her navigation station and began plotting courses for their next mission. The galaxy was a big place, full of humans who needed to learn they weren't alone. And thanks to a cowboy who refused to leave anyone behind, more and more of them were coming home. The girl they had tried to break had become a woman who would help break others free. And in the vast darkness of space, the light of human determination burned brighter than any star.